I've discussed how purpose informs vision, service, discipline, and overall effectiveness in the past. But likewise, reasons can slow you down. If you're not conscious of the reasons why you do the things you do, not only can you not access higher levels of achievement, you may also be self-sabotaging your progress. All about this on this week's episode of the Badass Agile podcast. Greetings, team. Welcome to the Badass Agile podcast. I'm your host, Chris Williams. Hey guys, welcome back and thank you for tuning in. I'm so happy to have you here. What do we need to know about reasons? How can the wrong reasons slow you down? Let's take a closer look. But first, let's remember why we're here. To create an elite tribe of leaders who truly serve their clients and communities by doing what matters and what works, relentlessly chasing value and excellence like a badass. There are so many resources about what you need to do to be agile, but we're focused on who you need to become in order to lead teams. So let's hammer down those fundamentals to create a unique and powerful force in this industry. And if this helps you, tell your friends. And don't forget to check out my daily Agile inspirations for leaders by subscribing to my email list. You'll get a preview of next week's post and a free video to help you align your week with strength and focus, delivered right to your inbox. You can also submit your coaching or leadership questions all at badassagile.com. So go sign up and post your questions today. Now, I'm a believer in something called 10x performance, or even 20x performance. The theory is that you're capable of 10 to 20 times or more what you currently think you're capable of. But in order to access those performance levels, you need to have good reasons for going there. Think about it. The only reason why you're not doing 10 or 20 times what you're capable of now is the excuses and stories that you tell yourself about why you can't. See, the life that you aspire to takes way more work and capacity than where you're at right now. Doesn't that make sense? Otherwise, you'd be where you want to be already. Getting to the next level requires some kind of up, some kind of next level commitment and effort. And if you were already good at reaching those levels, you'd already be where you want to be. So what does one need to do to get there? Reasons. Now, if you're already in touch with your reasons for doing what you do, that's great. But it may not be enough. There's something else you have to be careful about. See, the human mind is an interesting thing. It's very powerful in its ability to solve problems, but it also has a very strong capacity to create excuses and defenses around things that hold you back. See, sometimes you need to liberate yourself from your own best or worst thinking. Enter the limiting belief, also known as negative self-talk, or the stories that you tell yourself. These are the things that you say or perhaps feel to yourself that are either neutral or negative in nature. Now, here's the thing. You may not know you have them. And even if you know that you have them, you may not think that they hurt you. The reason why is that they're a toolkit of the mind to keep you safe from danger. They're there to protect you from the things that you fear. You'll never obey a command that you find disgusting, or truly immoral, or against your core. So believe it or not, your body gets very good at telling stories that it otherwise wouldn't accept as a way of avoiding harm. Now, this is where all of the fears that we've been discussing in the past few weeks come into play now. Things like loss of significance, loss of safety, loss of certainty, loss of esteem. Your mind has a script for each and every one of these. It has a really compelling story that it's ready to tell you at a moment's notice anytime it thinks these assets or these resources are in danger or being threatened. Now, it's one thing to hear negative self-talk like this. Don't go talk to that new guy in the corner, because you don't know if he's accepted by the tribe. You don't know if he will reject you. And because you don't know that, there is danger. You don't want to lose your self-esteem. You don't want to be seen as insignificant. You don't want to be ostracized by the tribe, by the group, by your peers. So just leave it alone. Let him come to you, or maybe talk to him in a couple of weeks after you've had a chance to give him a good long look. Now, you can hear yourself say that, and you can eventually look at it and say, that's an irrational fear. There's no basis in logic. So forget that. I'm going to be brave and I'm going to go do it anyway. Well, that's if you have negative self-talk. The really scary self-talk is the one that's more neutral, because they don't ring in your head like alarms or denials. In fact, they feel soothing, and they keep us around the status quo, which makes us feel safe and calm. So we may not rationalize things as, look, don't stand up in front of the team and tell them about that defect because they're going to throw rocks at you, so you're in danger. The mind tends not to work that way. It will instead say things like, look, somebody else will bring it up. It's not your job to raise those defects. Don't rock the boat. The right thing will happen when it needs to. Do you see how that line of thinking is not so much about instilling fear by visualizing negative consequences? It's more about saying, listen, why shake up the status quo? Everything's good. Even if you do nothing, things will sort themselves out in the end. Everything will be okay because everything's always been okay. I find those are the really dangerous ones, don't you? And I find them dangerous because we're less inclined to challenge them, because they seem perfectly reasonable. Well, let's think of some examples about how these things might show up. Imagine you have a process that currently takes 30 days to complete. It could be a hiring process, it could be procurement, it could be a marketing cycle, or maybe you have a vendor that just won't play ball when it comes to Agile. So they want to do things their way, you want to do things the Agile way. Now you have a confrontation. What are some of the things that you say in your head? You can probably hear them right now as you're listening to this podcast. If you've ever lived through them or are about to live through them, you say things like, well, that's too big or complex to change. I mean, it is really well ingrained and entrenched. It's hard to outmaneuver tradition. Or you might say, well, I suppose it could change, but it's beyond my control. I'm just one lowly person. I don't have the power. I don't have the weight. I don't have the rank. I don't have the support, or I don't have the certainty to make a case for changing the status quo. Or we simply may not believe in ourselves. We might say, as in the example previously, that making massive impact, that's for somebody else to handle. I'm not like that. I just want to show up and do my job. I don't want to rock the boat. Another very common limiting belief is to tell ourselves that, hey, it's the way we've always done things. And because it's the way we've always done things, it can't possibly be wrong, or we wouldn't have always done it that way. Isn't that one a little scary? There's a little bit more of that bystander effect built into that one. That if it was meant to be changed, somebody else would have changed it by now. You may also have tried to fix it in the past or tried to fix something similar, and it didn't work or it didn't fit. You weren't necessarily ostracized. There's nothing to fear in the outcome that you got. But it just didn't work, it didn't fit, so why bother wasting time trying to fix it again? Well, did you notice with all of these limiting beliefs that I just described, the scripts focus on what's impossible rather than what is possible. Now here's something you need to know. The mind will quit on you long before the body will. If you believe that this is not fixable, the rest of your body, from your facial expressions, your movements, your heart rate, your posture, everything will follow suit and simply give up mentally and physically. So in my experience and in my beliefs, I know that the best way to crush limiting beliefs is to change what's going on in your mind first, and the rest of your body and the rest of your outward appearance will follow suit to support you. So let's focus on that. How do you get out of these limiting beliefs for yourselves and other people? Let's assume that you're not the one with the limiting belief, but it's your teammates who have it. How do you convince other people to change the stories that they tell themselves? Well, first thing you can do is lean on your role as an individual coach. If you're a Scrum Master or a leader, you have the opportunity to offer one-on-one coaching to your teammates. I highly recommend that you offer it and carve out the time to spend time with only those who want it. Don't force it on people, but offer coaching to the executives, the managers, the Agile leaders, the team leaders, and the individual team members. Not everyone will take you up on it, but those that do are there to improve, and they're there to make a difference. One of the things you can do in those individual coaching sessions is get people to self-identify their beliefs. The question to ask is, what do you believe about Agile and what it takes to make it real in this team and this organization? What do you believe? You'll hear them say things like, well, the change is too big, or I can't be the person who drives forward change, something like we just discussed in the previous section. Get them to own that they have that belief, that it's a script they run in their mind, consciously or not, and get them to admit that it impacts their ability to perform. Because if the mind quits before the body does, if your mind tells stories about why we can't have change, you won't have the will to push through challenges and resistance to make sure that the change happens. Ask them to come up with real examples from their history, recent or distant, of how that belief has slowed them down and held them back. Then you can go about the job in future sessions of focusing on alternative beliefs that they could adopt and document and measure through those subsequent sessions about the times when they chose to honor a positive belief rather than a limiting one, and what kind of outcome changes did they get. The next thing you should do is lean on your role as a team coach to create safe experiments for the team. Remember that logic and reason is not entirely effective in influencing people. You have to show by example how myths can be broken. That's the best way to open people's minds to what's possible as opposed to what they believe is impossible. Now, this is an Agile technique, guys. Show, don't tell. So none of this should be a surprise. You already know this stuff, and you can do this with your teams right now. First things first, break their big problems, like a non-compliant vendor, into smaller problems and solutions. So rather than focusing on the fact that your vendor's completely non-compliant, start with the fact that you'd really like them to do stand-ups. So now you could identify small, workable experience that you think will work, even if you're not certain that they'll work, that you think will work, and be prepared as their leader to support the outcome no matter what. A space that is safe and self-authorized. Let them design the experiment, execute it, insulate them from failure if it goes wrong. Next, take on the attitude and circulate it amongst your team that you either triumph in life or you learn. There's no triumph or fail. Nothing is a failure. If you triumph, it's a success. Celebrate the success and make a note of how it defies the myth that's built into that limiting belief, because that will help break the myth. If it fails, encourage the team for what they've now learned. And now go back to the drawing board and repeat the experiment with a new hypothesis and new tweaks. So you've broken big problems into small ones, proposed small experiments as potential solutions, and you're ready to support and enable your team by eliminating the notion of failure as a bad thing. The last step is to compare where you are now to where you get to in 7 days or 14 days or 30 days. The changes might not be big, but they'll be there, I guarantee you. So now's the time to ask the team if they're excited about their capacity to break through limiting beliefs and create outcomes that they previously didn't think were possible. And once you have that agreement, you can now ask them, what else could we change? So you have to encourage people to believe that they're limitless. But what keeps people from reaching their full potential is the beliefs that they hold. So encourage people to read stories about outliers, people who defied their own limiting beliefs and created incredible outcomes as a result. Look, YouTube is full of this stuff. People send them to you in Messenger and on Instagram every single day, don't they? Yet, how often do we make a practice of watching those highlight reels from these great inspiring speeches and stories and interviews in such a way that we're surrounding ourselves with powerful, meaningful inspiration every single day? The kind of inspiration that reminds us of the fundamental beliefs that we should hold and those that we should break. Try these things today and see what kind of difference it makes in your effectiveness as an Agile team. Folks, thank you for listening. You can reach out at badassagile.com or find me on Twitter at badass_agile. And I'll see you next time. Till then, stay badass.